So crazy last couple days in the market. The S&P was up over 9%. The Nasdaq was up over 12%. One of the best days in the history of the stock market. Obviously, a lot of stuff to unpack here relating to Trump, relating to tariffs, relating to so many different things. We're going to unravel a lot of stuff here. What do I think is going to happen in the market over the coming weeks and months? What stocks am I adding here? Am I offloading because I believe the market is going to crash? As always, guys, let's keep it brief and simple and get right into this. So if you guys want the brief answer, the short answer first, the answer is yes, I will be buying stocks in this general area, but not quite yet. And I'm going to explain exactly why in just a second here. I'm going to pull up some data for you to see exactly why this is a good spot to potentially be adding for the future, but why you could get wrecked in the short term. But briefly, guys, let's go over what's going on here and why it's important. So right now, guys, we are looking at QQQ. Obviously, this tracks the Nasdaq, and you can see that we are on the daily chart. Yesterday, we had this massive move to the upside. Again, like I said, one of the biggest days in the market's history with a 12.36 day, almost give or take. Absolutely insane. And you can see today we are actually having a pretty big pullback. We gapped down, and we actually at one point were back down 7% of this whole move. So giving back 7%. At one point we were only up 5% on the day, but obviously now we are recovering slightly here. But obviously this news was relating to Trump putting a 90-day pause on the tariffs. And that was obviously major news for the markets. It was a big surprise, and that is why we had this massive move. A lot of people have differing opinions as to why this is happening. Why is Trump removing the tariffs? Is this related to him chickening out, quote unquote? But I think what a lot of people are not really paying attention to as much, or maybe they are and just don't really care too much about it, is the bond market. And I'm going to explain to you guys exactly why I think Trump is doing this, how it relates to the bond market, and how that's actually going to impact you making money or not. Okay, guys, so very briefly here, we're looking at the 10-year treasury yield. I've explained in past videos that the Federal Reserve has been trying their best to work with the administration, but obviously Trump wants to lower the 10-year yield as much as he can. I've explained that the US has to refinance debt over the next 6 to 12 months. I believe it's something along the lines of $7 to $9 trillion that they have to refinance. And Trump's goal is obviously to save money, cutting costs with Doge, and just in general reducing spending. So their objective is to lower the 10-year treasury as much as possible when they refinance the debt. In January, the 10-year was trading at almost 5%. And with all the uncertainty and fear in the markets, a lot of investors have been flooding to bonds, which has in turn increased the prices of bonds, reduced the yield. We were almost down at 3.8%, give or take, just a few days ago, with the ability for the US to refinance that debt from what was originally a 5% rate to a 3.85. So that's a huge amount of savings when it comes to trillions of dollars. Now I'm going to move my face real quick here so you guys can see. The lows that formed here in September are where I think that the administration is trying to aim for. They want to get this as low as possible. But obviously, once we hit these lows and we actually trade into this fair value gap, I'm telling you guys, these work for every single market, including the bond market. It's crazy how well they are respected. But after we traded into this fair value gap, you can see we had a massive eruption here. And there's a lot of speculation as to why the 10-year pumped like this. Some people think it was because China and Japan were doing some kind of retaliation and they were offloading all of their treasuries. Again, if they offload treasuries, then there's like a huge supply of treasuries into the markets. And that in turn with kind of decreased demand actually ends up shooting the yields up. Kind of basic supply and demand, guys. If there's more treasuries in the market and less demand, so more supply and less demand, then yields are going to go up to incentivize investors to buy. At the same time, the cost of the treasury ends up going down. So when the administration saw this massive pump here, I think they realized that something is going on with the bond market and they cannot keep going down this path of uncertainty with tariffs. And so I think that Trump probably just kind of folded here. Now, they did keep the tariffs in place with China, but every other tariff with every other country is at a base rate of 10% for the next 90 days. And obviously, guys, the market loves this. You can see we're back on QQQ. And after that, we had that historic day in the markets. Now, the question that everybody is wondering is this the time to buy stocks? And the answer is yes, but with a caveat. Like I said before, I'm going to pull up some data right now to explain this to you, but oftentimes, guys, when we have these massive days in the market, they go up over 8%, 9%, 10% historically. The reason it's not best to chase these candles is because oftentimes we make a new low in the markets before going higher. We're looking at days where the S&P was over 8%. and whether or not it formed a bottom in the markets. There are a lot of different scenarios here in March of 1933, 1929, 1931, September 32, October 2008, tons and tons of different times in the markets. Based on the results here, guys, there were only 2 days in the market where we actually formed a true bottom. March 15th, 1933, which I think is a little bit iffy. If we look back here, it looks like the lows in 1933 formed in February. It says that in March we had a 16% day, and if we come back here into the 40s, it looks like we came down very close to this area. So I'm not going to say for sure that March 15th was a true bottom, but we do know for sure that March 24th, 2020 was a true bottom because of all the trillions of dollars of stimulus they injected into the markets. But basically my point here, guys, is that after we have massive days of 8% plus, 99% of the time it ends up not being the true bottom in the markets, and we end up forming a new low. So when we go back to something like QQQ, or let's even look at the SPY quick, which tracks the S&P, because we're talking about that, it makes it more accurate. What we're trying to say here, guys, is that in a bear market, typically when you see these massive up moves, they are liquidity generating events. And oftentimes we will make a new low and sweep that low that forms on that specific day. So if you are feeling FOMO and you want to chase the markets right now, guys, just remember that it's very likely that we come back down and sweep this low at some point in time. If you are a dollar cost averager, then yes, these points in the market right here are still good to add. The SPY is still down almost 15% from this level, which is always a good place to DCA for the long term, in my opinion, like I've said in previous videos many a times. Now, quickly going over to some stocks, guys, that I'm looking to buy for the long term. Obviously, there's been a ton that we've been buying over the last few days. It's just been too good to ignore. In the community, I was adding quite a few different stocks here, and I'll go over some other data here in a second. But you can see that on April 4th, if we go back to April 4th, that was this Friday where we had this massive down day. Towards the end of the day, I started adding a lot of different positions, but of course, at 8 in the morning, I explained to people what I was looking to buy and for what reason. We added QQQ, SPY, Nvidia, AMD, Toyota, Occidental Petroleum, Google, Nike, Tesla, ASML, and a few other ones as well, but with smaller size. These were the main positions that I was adding. We got AMD in the 80s. We got Nvidia below $90, which was insane. I'm so happy that we were able to purchase Nvidia at these discounts, even though it could easily go lower. We were actually able to get QQQ below $410, which is a really nice bargain. My last ads were here. So pretty much at the immediate lows that we had in the market. Literally look at where these candles were on the daily. Going back to QQQ on the daily, literally at the low of day on the 8th was when I was calling for ads on QQQ and S&P. And of course, we're benefiting from this huge move up after Trump announced the pause in tariffs. If you guys want access to the community, this is done through Discord, and we are currently running a free 3-day trial. Make sure you click the link in the description below if you guys want access to that. But nonetheless, guys, there are tons of opportunities here still, and I'm not going to be deterred from buying the dip, but I will save some cash on the sidelines just in case we do have a bigger downside move. And history does show that likely we are going to have another low form in the markets. So don't feel too much FOMO, guys. You will probably get another opportunity to buy lower. We've also had some incredible days live day trading. I do this almost every single day on YouTube and in the community as well. So that is another benefit you guys are going to have. We cover option selling, live day trading, swing trading, long-term investing, everything under the sun related to the stock market and the futures market. Oh, and really quickly, guys, another thing related to the long-term investing and something that I love to point out. Another reason I was buying here was that the VIX was at 50 plus. So if you guys don't know what the VIX is, it's essentially the volatility index in the markets. And historically, guys, if the markets are down 20% plus and the VIX is above 40, it is always a good time to be buying stocks for the long term and indices. And you can see I was looking at the VIX, guys, when we were above 50 and we were down 20+%. And as a result, guys, there was that massive move on QQQ. Please let me know your thoughts on the market. Do you think that this crash is over? Do you think it's going to continue? Do you think we're going to have a bigger rally before we end up ultimately selling off, or are we going to make new all-time highs? Make sure you like and subscribe if you want more content like this, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.